head, whatever you remember, just to get a sense of this softness in your intention. This softness, and there's something about softness of intention and softness through our middle. Of our breathing being soft and available and responsive. And keeping that quality. Could you find a way to roll to your belly? Really, the ease, the lightness. That your head feels light and free. And I love this. And turn your head any way you like, as long as it's to the right. And again, just explore there. Your head's to the right. Is it light there? With all of those things you were looking before on your back. Is there somewhere you want to position your head just a little bit differently to find that you don't need to push? So we're looking for the lightness of your head. What's something else? We're looking for, where's your pelvis? Free. Does your pelvis know your head? Can we find a position that if you rolled your pelvis a little left and right, you could begin to feel that going through you to the base of your neck? And again, if that's not clear, you might want to reposition your head. Because all of these movements will be easier if we're already in an easier starting position. So you can choose to have your left arm wherever you like at the moment, whether it's down by your side, up around your head, just somewhere where you feel it helps you to have a light head and a connection through to your pelvis. You might want to explore the width of your legs. So if you can already feel that you have to have brought one leg up to the side, could you find a different distance of your legs that might help you to do that? That you don't need to bring your leg up to the side if you maybe have your legs spread wider than you normally might have them. If you give yourself a little bit bigger base of support, does that help? That you don't need to bring your knee up as much to the side. And again, after watching this lesson this morning with Elizabeth, could you find a way to take your right hand into that bell-like position that we were in the other day? So your fingers and your thumb touching the ground. And where would you want your elbow to be? And what was Elizabeth discovering about what enabled her arm to get into this position a little bit more easily. And just gently begin that bell movement. And again, I'd really encourage you at the moment, if you're struggling, make the movement really small. Imagine it. Because even there, you've got the whole gestalt of the movement. Where am I pushing? Where am I holding my breath? What am I tightening? So that you can really be working with that intentional part, that you can be really feeling, can I clear some of that effort out of my intentional cortex, the bit that executes the action? And how far through yourself do you feel that movement? Just like we were doing in the FI, do you think that that arm movement's got anything to do with your other shoulder? With something happening at the base of your neck? And it's not that these movements need to be big, but something can respond there. And I've given Alistair a bit of a head start here on some of you. So one of the things that will lighten your arm is you've got to find this gentle glide of your shoulder blade back over your ribs. Because where a lot of people get stuck is they're tightening the front of themselves. And whatever it is for you at the moment, to find this little bell hand and to feel, if your elbow's not off the floor, that's fine. But can you feel that your elbow would at least lighten on the floor doing this movement? That it's not pushing into the floor. Anywhere you like with your left arm. Yeah. And so some of you can see, are really beginning to feel that to let this bell hand happen and that the elbow doesn't have to go straight up into the air maybe. But as it lifts, maybe as your shoulder pulls back and down a little bit, your elbow gets pulled a little bit. Sort of closer into you as it lifts. So really explore the trajectory. Remember, whenever we hit a roadblock, we want to try trajectory as our first idea. Okay, so now you're starting to get the quality. So could you keep this quality and very, very slowly find a way to turn your head the other way? And it doesn't have to be in one go. Please don't make it in one go. So how can you have this freedom through your shoulders, through your collarbones? And when would it make sense to begin to lift your head, to begin to turn it? Would it be when the bell hand is coming up or when it's going down? What would be your timing here? And you're looking for lightness. And those of you who have got your leg up, that's absolutely fine. But see, as we keep going, can you gradually begin to feel you can take it down a little bit? And how much of you follows this movement of your head? Are your heels responding? Your knees? Your hips? Where's the weight on your pelvis? So when you go to lift this arm, is all the weight going into your middle? Or can you begin to feel you can have a bigger contact area of your belly on the floor as you lighten your hand? That you don't have to go into arching your back and lifting your hips. So next time you get your head around to the left, and if you haven't, turn your head to the left and reorganize yourself this side. Where would you like your right arm to be? And could you begin to make a bell hand with your left hand? And again, have you checked out before you started? Is your head light? Have you got it in a position where it's light? Is your pelvis free? Are your heels ready to roll a little bit? Again, what does your other shoulder need to do? Is it staying in one position or is it adapting? And can you find a way to begin to turn your head to the right while you keep this gentle bell hand going? And again, if you're really feeling that push into the ground, could you imagine again that idea of compressed air? Or this really water that you're in the Dead Sea, and this water can just sort of, you can soften into it to allow your weight to roll a little. And again, feel, when would it be easiest to lift your head to begin to turn it? Is it when you're bringing your fingers together and your elbows lifting a little bit? And when would you put it down? And notice, how do you turn your head? Do you have only one option? So does your chin go down as you turn your head? Or do you more turn around so that your nose stays in a straight line? Or does your chin go up a little bit and you extend your neck? So is there something different you could change in your neck or where you're going to look that might make your head a little bit lighter, might help you to find a little bit more possibility? And then for some of you, it might be possible that you could have both hands up around your head. And you could sort of alternate. You sort of do the bell with one, and that turns your head one way, and then you do the bell with the other, and that turns your head the other way. And you're beginning to see there's some connection between this bell movement I'm doing and the movement that I can find this softness or lightness in my head and in my pelvis and in my belly and in my ribs and in my heels and in my knees. And don't tire yourself. Remember, you can always just think it, just as we were doing in the previous lesson. Just really, what's my intention here? Can I softly keep moving, shifting my awareness so that there's this space that maybe you can begin to find where all of me is in my image at the same time. And I can spread my attention. I can still think what's happening in my shoulder, what's happening in my elbow, but I've got the big picture there all the time. So that you're beginning to do this movement with the smallest possible exertion. And next time your head's to the right, could you leave it there? Just see how that feels at the moment after doing those simple movements. Is it easier for some of you to not have your right leg bent up? That there's a little bit more through your torso that can now contact the ground? And begin to gently tilt your pelvis a little right and left, the smallest movement that you can. The smallest movement that you can. And really get a sense of, where do I initiate that from? So that you can really get a sense, it's my pelvis. Of course, your hips must respond if you're going to move your pelvis. Your lumbar spine is going to have to respond. It's you doing the movement, but that you're thinking of initiating. And when you think of your pelvis, do you think of the whole 3D shape of your pelvis, or do you more think of one part of your pelvis? So your head's now staying to the right, and could you now begin to bell a little bit both hands? Small movement, and feel, how do I do this without pushing forward into the floor? What can I mobilize in my upper back to get lightness? And my pelvis keeps rolling a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. And you can explore here. Is it possible for me to do this and both hands bell open and close? Or maybe for me, I have to start with one hand belling as the other one releases, and then I think of the other one belling as it releases, whatever you find. As I do this really small movement of rolling my pelvis a little left and a little right. Are your heels following your pelvis? Your knees? And it doesn't need to be a big movement. I'm not suggesting that, but that you can feel, could be very, very small, but you know that they're in your image. And then leave your hands quiet again, still facing right with your head. And just see, has that done anything to your contact with the ground? And keeping your head to the right and your hands quiet, begin to roll your pelvis a little bit, tilt it a little left and right. And the smallest movement that you can, could you feel that as you roll your pelvis toward the left side, that your right knee might want to begin to bend a little bit to pull up? And as your pelvis comes back to the middle, that'll lengthen down a little. And as you roll to the right, as you roll to the left, your right knee will begin to bend a little. And make it as small as you can. Your hands are still quiet, resting on the ground. And you're doing the smallest movement possible to feel that one leg begins to bend a little bit and then the other. And how far through you do you feel that movement? What's happening between your shoulder blades? Do you feel anything responding up there? Or for you, just keeping your hands quiet means that your shoulders have gone quiet. That something in the base of your neck could still be responding to this little movement. And what are your shoulders doing? Are they going up and down relative to your head? Are they going forward, back relative to your spine? How can they be part of your image? And just for a moment, feel what happens if you don't allow your shoulder blades to move. If you've sort of, by resting your arms, you've dropped them. You've sort of made them heavy, that your shoulders don't feel light. and ready to lift. Because that's what we're looking for, lightness, so that your shoulders are ready to move. Your pelvis is ready to move. Relaxation for us is never about heaviness. It's about a giving to the ground giving to us, but not heaviness. And then as you continue that movement, your hands are still quiet on the floor. Could you begin to turn your head? And when would you turn your head? So you're still rotating your pelvis, still feeling that one knee is getting ready to bend a little bit. The other is getting ready to bend. And again, check the distance of your legs. Maybe some of you don't need them quite so wide now. Keep experimenting. And when would you lift your head? What part of that pelvic trajectory would your head become lighter? How much of your low belly have you got to roll over? And really explore again, where does your head go? Does your head look under to do this? Does it look up a little? So your neck is still free to change its shape. At any moment, your chin can come a little closer to your chest or away from your chest. You could be looking down a little or up a little. And it's just becoming lighter and easier. More and more of you is becoming involved. And what's happening at the base of your neck, that area for so many of us that's a bit of a mystery? That's such an interesting area because it doesn't need to do much movement. But if it can move, because our arms are becoming freer and lighter, how does that really influence the lightness in your head and your pelvis? And maybe you could find that your head could begin to turn whatever direction you're turning it in, that it could turn in the opposite direction to your pelvis. So if maybe you'd found that your head turned one way, could you turn it the other way as your pelvis tilts to the right or your pelvis tilts to the left? So your forearms are resting really lightly on the ground, your hands, and your shoulders are alive. Your shoulders are alive. And as you find this aliveness, you gradually feel that you can do a movement more and more around your middle line. So you can gradually make the movement of your pelvis smaller. Nothing needs to press. And have a rest, any position. We're always working. I think I might have told you this story, so we'll call it story number 2, if you like, except it's not really a joke. We're always working within an ATM with this idea that we would love something to be evoked. Do you know what I mean? That if someone's doing the movement, that as they release their intentionality, that something can begin to emerge. And I know the first time I was teaching in Paris, and it was really Miriam Pfeffer, who was an amazing woman, and it was her training. And Miriam worked, she did the first Israeli training, and she worked very much from the premise that if people can find the quality, the movement will emerge. And it was so funny because she was doing head circles, and we spent so long, you know, a little bit like you were doing yesterday, head resting on the chest and roll the head, and what will happen. And if you keep reducing the effort and spreading your attention, what will happen? And Paul Newton, who's another trainer, really great teacher. And anyway, he was sort of more in charge of what was being done in the sort of curriculum, and he's having this conversation. If Miriam keeps doing this for the next few days, we're not going to get anything done. You know, we're just not going to get through any of the material that we need to get through. And that's what I love, this constant, if you like, play between how long do I keep going and waiting for something to emerge, and what then will I add? What could I add as a thing? So at this point of the lesson, all of a sudden Feldenkrais says, now I can see that my patience is not good enough to wait until you find it yourself. Some of you are finding it beautifully, but you know, it's really interesting. Do you know? So what's he going to put in that might help you, some of you, to find it a little bit more? So when you're ready to return, looking to your right, could you lengthen your right arm a little bit more on the floor above your head, just really lightly, somewhere where it can just be a little bit lengthened, but you've still got the lightness in your head. Your pelvis can still turn a little bit easily side to side. And begin the bell movement again, but not what we've been doing, but think of it more along the floor this time. So as you close the bell, your elbow is going to slide down along the floor in the direction of your pelvis, and as you open it, your arm, your elbow might be able to reach and lift, and you reach it forward again. So instead of the bell being vertical, it's now a little bit more horizontal. But it's still this same movement of the bell, that the fingers are pulling together to close the bell, and then you reach and open it. And when would you want to turn your head to do this? So when would you want to lift your head or turn it? Would it be when the bell is coming down, bringing your elbow down? Or is it when it's starting to lift up above your head? And again, when's the point that maybe your elbow starts to get lighter, to lift into the air? And then once you've turned your head, could you bell the other hand? So once you turn to the left, could you begin to bell your left hand so that the arm's pulling down as the fingers and the thumb come together a little bit, still long fingers, long fingers. And maybe some of you might begin to recognize this movement. Then maybe you could begin to combine both arms. So when might one be reaching forward as one's pulling down? And you can let your pelvis still roll a little bit and your knees bend a little bit. But as you find more of your low belly can come to the floor as you do this, more of your low belly can be rolled over rather than your mid belly. So one arm's reaching, so you can feel, some of you can already feel it, it's swimming. Yeah. And you can let your legs roll as much as you like, your pelvis, and pull your leg up so that maybe you can find a way that as your arms are doing this, and some of you might want to do one arm and leave it up and then the other one and bring it up. These are all swimming training techniques. So maybe, you know, as you're turning to the left, your right ear could come to rest near your right arm. Or even some of you rest on it. And as you turn to the right, and begin to feel that as you get more organized, as you get more organized, you won't have to shift your weight as much. You'll be able to move a little bit more around the midline, but do as much as you need to find this. So Shane Gould, the famous West Australian, how she teaches swimming is to do a complete roll. This is how she starts people off, really rolling completely to one side and completely to the other side. So people start off with this huge roll through the water so that they can really come over their shoulder and their hip. And that's sort of like a little bit like you can feel really lengthening on one side, shortening on the other. And how free can your arm become then to reach down? And you can feel, where's the point where your elbow will lift up into the air to reach forward? So it slides down along the ground and then it reaches up. And then as you get more and more organized, you need to do less and less weight shift. As you find more parts of yourself that you can roll your weight to, which is one of the things we've been talking about, you can begin to refine it and find lightness on a smaller area. but it's always remembering it's your learning. So how do you let those middle parts of you find the ground and soften? And how do you begin to feel more and more of your low belly as you find more length, that the rolling is coming right across your low belly, not so much across that you're pushing into the middle, but there's a lot of you in contact with the ground. And just come back to resting on your belly, any place you like. And simply lift your head. How easy is it now to find your pelvis when you lift your head? And then as you put your head down, how easy is it to lift your pelvis? So how are you beginning to feel more and more of this weight shift? This ability to get something light, something else. So as I lift my head, the weight just keeps rolling down in the direction of toward my pelvis. And my arms are light. Go, Gloria. Yeah. Because you can feel you're ready to do breaststroke now. Butterfly, because you're down low. Can you feel into your pelvis? Yeah? Which is what I was showing with you yesterday, Chelsea. Yeah? That once you feel this weight can transfer down more, how much lighter you get in your upper torso. Okay, so how would you come up to standing after this? Would you come up rolling, or yeah, a lot of you are just sort of going backwards to come up. Just lifting your pelvis and getting up backwards onto your feet. So it's been a big week. What's the sensation you're taking home with you? Of your internal space, your external space, your ability to move a little bit forwards or backwards or left or right. How much you can shift your weight over your feet at the moment. So what is it about learning to do that on the floor that transfers? The freedom in your head. And remember, your question you're going to think about, this might give you a bit of an idea. How do you know you're integrated? How do you know you're integrated? What's integration? Have a good weekend. Have a bit of a rest. And we'll see you Monday. Oh, and thanks to Lisa, who's been here this first week. Thanks, Lisa.